Friends, let us continue our discussion on stability of chemical reactors, but before we go to this example, little background. If you recall, in our last session we saw that when we are looking at the behavior of an adiabatic stirred tank reactor or even a stirred tank reactor with a jacketed vessel in which exothermic reaction is taking place, there is a possibility that there will be more than one steady state depending upon the operating condition that we choose. We also saw that there were 3 steady states, for example, in a case of adiabatic reactor. Now, out of this 2 steady states are inherently stable, as we called them last time, and one was inherently unstable. So, what we will do in today's class is to look at some formal definition of stability and look at the condition which needs to be satisfied for a steady state to be stable or steady state is unstable. So, let us start this discussion by looking at a system whose dynamics is given by x dot equal to f of x. Note here, we assume that this is the dynamics which describe how system which is represented by state vector x. So, this is a vector in n dimensional space. So, it has components, for example, x1, x2 up to xn. Okay. So, this is a n dimensional space that we are looking at. Now, we would like to know the steady state which satisfies this dynamics. So, let us say that steady state is x of s, okay. Again a vector, and by very definition of a steady state, it implies that x s dot, when x is equal to x s, which is f of x s, which is 0. That is, steady state implies that dynamics has disappeared and we have reached a steady state which is invariant with time, and hence the time derivative is 0. So, we would like to know whether this steady state x s is stable or otherwise. This is the question that we are trying to answer in today's session. First thing that comes to mind is what is meant by stable. So, what is a proper definition of a state to be stable, a steady state to be stable? So, let us try to look at that by considering our dynamics, let us say x dot equal to f of x, and let us say that its solution or its trajectories are given by some function phi of t. That is, we do not know what this solution is, but let us say that solution is represented as some function phi of t, where I is 1 to up to n, our n dimensional space. So, what this trajectory or what these solutions imply is a movement in n dimensional space of how x will change as the time progresses. This xi as phi of t is referred to as trajectory of xi, that is how I changes with time. And we are now interested, for example, in looking at, let us say we have 2 dimensional space. Okay. For our simplicity, we will keep the discussion to 2 dimensional, but the same idea applies to higher dimensional problems also. So, we have one solution x1 which is phi 1 of t, and let us say x2 is phi 2 of t. Okay. So, if I were to plot x1 versus time, let us say this is that solution, and this corresponds to x2 versus time, some function. So, this is my phi 2 and the first function is let us say phi 1 of t. We now say that given this solution, we may not know that solution, but let us assume for sake of argument that we know this solution. Then I can invert these relationships, that is, I know x1 as a function of time, I know x2 as a function of time. So, I can always generate x1 as some function of x2, and this is what is called as phase space, that is representing one solution in terms of another variable. Okay. Few definitions before we actually look at the definition of stability itself. So, all we have done in writing this x1 as a function of x2 is, having known that x1 is phi 1 of t, x2 is phi 2 of t, I have just eliminated time and expressed x1 as a function of some function of x2. Let us introduce a concept of what we call Euclidean distance between points x and y, okay, in general, and we will make use of this Euclidean distance in describing what is meant by stability and so on. So, Euclidean distance between point x and y is defined as summation xi minus yi the whole square, I going from 1 to n components. So, we have 2 points x and y, and the Euclidean distance between these two is what we call norm of x minus y, and that is summation xi minus yi the whole square, and this summation is over all the components, n components of our space state vector, and raised to power half. Okay. One more idea before we go to the definition of stability. Let us define an region S of R and C, which denotes a region for a 2-dimensional space. It will be a spherical region of center C and radius r. Okay. And C is said to be the critical point. Now, why do we say C is the critical point with C equal to 0? In our considerations of stability of a steady state, what we are going to assume is y is 0, and it will become clear why y is 0 when we actually look at one particular system. So, if y is 0, then we can call the steady state solution as x equal to 0, and this will become clear when we actually look at the problem on hand, namely stability of a steady state. We will start with the first definition, and that pertains to this particular part, and I will explain what it means in with an example, but let me just read it out to begin with. A state x equal to 0, and we just now saw that by putting y equal to 0, our steady state has become x equal to 0. A state x equal to 0 is said to be stable when given some epsilon which is greater than 0, there exists a delta such greater than 0 and delta between 0 and epsilon, such that the norm of, if norm of x 0 is less than delta, then the norm of x of t, we had defined this norm just now, is less than epsilon for all time t greater than 0. Okay. Now, this will simplify this for a two dimensional problem to see what is actually the definition of stability. Okay. So, let us go back to two dimensional system, and first of all let us say that we have a steady state x equal to 0, and we are trying to look at whether that steady state is stable or not. So, let us say that in a two dimensional space, let us say we have only x1 and x2. Let us say this represents my steady state, that is x equal to 0. Now, I call this steady state stable for the case where I can find some delta and some epsilon such that 0 less than delta less than epsilon, such that let us say that circle is S of center 0 and radius delta. So, this radius is delta. Now, around this steady state point x equal to 0, I have a circle of radius delta, and if I can say that if I can find for all the points in this circle, wherever I start, if my norm of, so for all x of 0 less than delta, okay. Remember now this norm of x of 0 with this definition, when y is 0, this is nothing but for will be nothing but x1 at 0 value square plus x2 0 square raised to half. So, this being less than delta, which for a two dimensional system now is represented by this point delta, all my x of t. Now, what is my x of t? Norm of x of t is nothing but x1 of t the whole square plus x2 of t the whole square, because our other point is 0 raised to half, remains within this circle of radius epsilon. So, let me say that this represents my S of 0 and epsilon. Then starting with this x of 0, the green point which I said, my system is said to be stable if solution as a function of time remains in this circle of radius epsilon for all times from time t equal to 0 to time t equal to infinity. Okay. This is what I call a stable steady state. Once again, the idea is simple. I want to know whether my x of 0 is stable or not. that stable definition, formal definition says that for some region in the neighborhood of x equal to 0, if my initial starting point lies in this small neighborhood, then my dynamics requires that if the solutions for all times x of t greater than 0 remains within this neighborhood of epsilon, then I say that this point is stable. So, what it means is, suppose I start over here, the solution may look different, but for all times if I remain in this region, I would call such steady state x equal to 0 as a stable steady state. Now, the second definition, which talks about whether the steady state is attractive, and this is this particular portion. Once again I will read it out to you. A stable x equal to 0 is said to be asymptotically attractive when given mu greater than 0, such that for all x, that is norm of x less than mu, the limit as t goes to infinity, the norm of x goes to 0. This is when we say that this system is asymptotically attractive. Now, let us go back and see what is meant by asymptotically attractive state. This is what we said about asymptotically stable. Now, for asymptotically attractive state, what we are saying once again, for x equal to 0, if we can find some region as denoted by s of 0 and radius mu, and the starting point somewhere over here, then for all x of 0 less than mu, limit as t goes to infinity, norm of x of t is 0. If we can satisfy that condition, then we say that our state is asymptotically attractive. Now, what is the meaning of norm of x of t going to 0? If we look at our definition of norm, this can happen only when x1 and x2 individually goes to 0, because norm of x of t is x1 square plus x2 square and summation raised to square root, that is power half. So, for norm of x of t to go to 0 at long times, both x1 has to go to 0, x2 has to go to 0. That means that is our steady state. What is our steady state? X equal to 0, that means x1 equal to 0, x2 equal to 0. So, what this attractive definition says is that at this, starting from here, at long times we actually go to the state x equal to 0. The definition of stability alone said that for all such starting points, we remained in the close neighborhood of x equal to 0. The definition of attractive state, asymptotically attractive state, says that for all such starting points, we actually go to steady state x equal to 0 as time progresses. Now comes the definition of our asymptotically stable steady state, which says that a steady state is said to be asymptotically stable, and when it is stable and asymptotically attractive. Now, state is said to be marginally stable when it is stable, but not asymptotically attractive. Now, at first glance, this definition may seem to have some redundancy in it, saying that it should be stable and asymptotically attractive. Doesn't definition of stability indirectly or directly imply attractive, and definition of attractive directly or indirectly encompasses the definition of stability? The next set of examples will convince you that that is not necessarily the case. So, what we are seeing here is an example on the first hand, an example of whose dynamics is given by this x and y, and its steady state value is when x is equal to 0, y is equal to 0. Now, if you actually look at the dynamics of this system and try to look at the trajectories, it turns out that you try to take any starting condition, as time progresses it actually comes back to 0 and 0. So, system is attractive, but from a definition of stability of the system, remember what was the definition of stable system? For any starting point within this region delta, our solutions always remained within epsilon. Now, it turns out for this particular example on the left hand side, it is impossible to find, for given this starting point in some region delta, it is impossible to find an epsilon such that the solution is entirely within this epsilon region. So, it does is an attractive state, that is solutions eventually go to x equal to 0, but it is not a stable state. So, this is an example of attractive but not stable. On the right hand side is another example, dx dt equal to y and dy dt equal to x, whose again steady state solution is x equal to 0 and y equal to 0. Now, if we start with some starting point, let us say over here, the dynamics of this system keeps it on this circle or a limit cycle. So, the solution never actually converges. So, it never goes to 0. So, that never happens. So, what does it mean? It means that for this particular example, we can always find an epsilon and delta such that the long time solution is within this, bounded within this region epsilon. But so, it is a stable steady state, but it is not an attractive steady state, because solution does not eventually go to x equal to 0. So, this is stable but not attractive, and hence to have an asymptotically stable solution, we need both a state has to be stable and asymptotically asymptotically attractive. So, we call a steady state asymptotically stable only when it is stable according to this definition, and it is asymptotically attractive according to this definition. So, that is how we define an asymptotically stable. So, when we are talking about the stability of a steady state or otherwise, we are looking at asymptotically stable steady states. Of course, a system is said to be unstable when it is not stable. I mean, that is understood. Okay. So, now let us go back to our dynamics and try to see how can we find out the stability of a steady state for which we have a dynamics which is given by x dot equal to f of x. So, we want to find the stability of the steady state, that is when x dot is equal to 0, when x at that time is some steady state x s. So, we would like to know how to find the stability of such steady state. Now, before we actually find the stability and determine the criteria, we are going to do a small variation, in the sense that we are going to look at how the behavior of the system is away from the steady state value. Remember, when we talked about the definition, we said that this is my steady state, and this is my starting point in the close neighborhood of this steady state. We of course also said that we are going to call x equal to 0 as our steady state value. Okay. Okay. So, what are we going to do? We are actually going to look at the perturbation of my system, because what is the meaning that I start from this particular point? That means, I have perturbed my steady state by some quantity, in this case by a small quantity. So, let me enlarge it. So, a small perturbation. So, I am going to look at what happens when I introduce a small perturbation, what happens to my solution. So, now in order to keep the discussion with a x equal to 0 as my steady state, I am going to define the variable y as x minus x s. Okay. So, if I do that, then I can write y dot as x dot minus x s dot, right. I am going to further going to write, I know x equal to x s is my steady state. So, I know x s dot is equal to 0, and I know my x dot is f of x, and this quantity is 0. Okay. So, what I am going to do now is I am going to write f of x in the following manner. I am going to expand using Taylor series expansion, and this would around this steady state value x of s. So, this will be f of x of s plus, remember x is a n component quantity. So, I will have terms like del f I or let me write it for f of x 1, okay, to begin with. So, f of x of s plus, I am going to expand this using Taylor series expansion. So, this will be del f 1 del x 1 into x 1 minus x 1 s plus del f 1 del x 2 into x 1 minus x 2 minus x 2 s and so on. Or in short, if I now generalize this, then I can write f of any x I as f of x s plus summation del f I del x j minus x j s, j going from 1 to n, plus I will of course have second order term, higher order term. So, I will have terms like del square del x k x j minus 0 x j minus x j s into x k minus x k s and so on. A simple Taylor series expansion, right. So, now knowing this and making another assumption that I am going to neglect all higher order term and keep only the first order term. That means, I am going to neglect all these terms and then go back to my y dot equation, which is actually nothing but f of x, and I am going to put for that. So, that would be y dot equal to, this has gone to 0, or if I want to write y I dot for example, that will be f of x I, which will be summation del f I del x j, and x j minus x j is nothing but y j, right. So, this, if I write for all such i's y 1, y 2, y I up to y n and put all these things together, I will have the dynamics, the perturbation dynamics y dot defined as, if I just expand these terms, we have y 1, y 2, y n, and the first term here will be del f 1 del x 1 del f 1 del x 2 del f 1 del x 3 del f n del x n, right. So, all these similar quantities up to del f 1 del x n del f n del x n. Okay. So, I will have all these terms, which now I can write in a more compact form as y dot equal to A of y, where A is my Jacobian matrix del F1 del x1, del F1 del x2, del F1 del x3 and so on and so forth up to. So, this is my dynamics of my perturbation variable y, and I am interested in knowing what happens, what is the steady state solution of this. Y is equal to 0. Remember, our y is x minus xs. So, when x reaches a steady state xs, my y is 0, and this will then tell me that if I start with some y of 0 having a value delta, let us say something like this, what happens to my y of t? Does it go back here? Does it go somewhere else? And so on and so forth. So, that will then tell me what is the solution or what is the status of this steady state f of x of s. Let me recap what we saw just now before I go on to describing the solution of these states, or how do we find this condition for stability. Let us put things in perspective. We have a system whose dynamics is given like this, whose dynamics is given in this particular manner. Okay. What we are trying to find out is if the steady state x equal to xs is the steady state solution of this, such that xs dot equal to f of x equal to 0, is it stable or otherwise? That is the question that we have in front of us. In order to make this question little less abstract, let us go back to our problem of reaction engineering, and let us try to make this little less abstract. So, let me see if I can. Okay. I am looking at stability of a CSTR. So, from our last session, we know that this is my CSTR operation for which mass balance equations and energy balance equations are given in this particular manner. Okay. DC1, we are looking at reaction A1 going to A2 in this CSTR, for which we are trying to maintain a steady state, and by providing a cooling jacket or a jacket in which a coolant is being circulated at a temperature Tr, and we are trying to find out the steady state operations and what is possible or otherwise. So, what we did last time was we defined this non-dimensional quantities. We defined these non-dimensional quantities. And converted this dimensional form of mass and energy balance into the non-dimensional form of mass and energy balances. Okay. Now, we will take these mass and energy balances and represent it in the form of heat generation term and heat removal term, as we have done over here. So, what I am going to do is I am going to rewrite those mass and energy balances just to keep things in a proper perspective. So, we can, and I am going to take only first order reaction, okay, simplify matter considerably. So, we had our dimensionless mass balance in terms of dimensionless concentration as one minus x, and we had our dimensionless temperature as B into R minus Q R, and we call this B into R term as Q G. Okay. We are interested. So, first of all, let us define our steady state solution as x equal to x s, some dimensionless quantity, and theta equal to theta s. Okay. So, then we will define the perturbation variable. We are looking at only two dimensional system over here, that makes matters little easy. So, we will define our perturbation variable y 1 as x minus x s and y 2 as theta minus theta s. Okay. So, given this, going back to this, what is our dynamics x equal to f of x? X equal to f of x, for example, if I write x, and this is not to be confused with dimensionless quantities, the notation is a little unfortunate, but let's stick with that, x and theta, then my x dot equal to f of x, my f will be f 1 and f 2, where f 1 is this whole quantity and f 2 is this whole quantity, or in other words, my f 1 is minus x by k 0 tau r plus e raised to theta by 1 plus theta by gamma into 1 minus x, and my f 2 is b into r minus q r. Okay. So, these are my f 1 and f 2. Then this is my steady state solution x equal to x of s. So, that steady state solution, last time we saw that steady state solution are these three steady state solutions, or depending upon the operating conditions. So, this is when q r is equal to q g and so on. So, I am actually trying to look at those solutions x equal to x s, theta equal to theta s, and for which I define my perturbation variables y 1 and y 2 as x minus x s and theta minus theta s, such that I can write my solution of x dot equal to f of x, and in terms of my dimensionless quantities, my y dot which is a of y, this is the equation that I am looking for, can now be written in the following manner. Remember, our y dot, which is y 1 dot and y2 dot, which is equal to, in the real terms, dimensionless concentration and dimensionless temperature, that is deviation from the steady state value. This is the real quantity that we are looking at, and these are my F1 and F2. So, this quantity is now nothing but del F1 del x del F1 del theta del F2 del x del F2 del theta into y1 and y2, where what is del f del x? Derivative of this f1 with respect to x, del f1 del f theta, derivative of f1 with respect to theta, and so on. And this vector matrix we called as Jacobian matrix A bar, and wrote the dynamics y dot equal to and we are interested in looking at solution of this y. Now, how do we get the solution of this y? To do that, let's look at our dynamics. Y dot equal to y is a vector and A is a matrix. Now, I want to look at solution of this matrix. Okay. Let's define y, and we'll come to that in a minute. What is all this? Y as matrix V into Z. What is matrix V? Matrix V is the matrix of eigenvectors of A. Eigenvectors of A. What are eigenvectors? Matrix of eigenvectors. Given this matrix A, it satisfies this particular condition, right? This you know from your mathematics, where what is the matrix lambda? Lambda matrix is a diagonal matrix of eigenvalues lambda 1, lambda n. So, and what is this matrix V1? So, there are lambda 1, lambda 2, lambda n represent n eigenvalues of this Jacobian matrix A. Then V1 is the eigenvector corresponding to matrix eigenvalue lambda 1. So, matrix consisting of V1, V2, these are my, this makes my eigenvector matrix V, and we know this from the definition of eigenvalue. Okay. So, if we now look at our y dot equal to A y and define y equal to V into Z, then what do we get? Then we get y dot, which is V Z dot is A V Z, by putting for y equal to V Z on both sides of this equation. So, what do I get? I get y dot, or rather let us not worry about y dot anymore. I get V Z dot equal to A V Z. So, if I pre-multiply both sides by V inverse, I get Z dot equal to V inverse A V Z. But what is V inverse AV? Remember our A V equal to lambda V, where lambda is a diagonal matrix. So, this gives us V inverse AV is nothing but Z dot equal to lambda Z. Lambda is a diagonal matrix. So, we can write the solution of this as Z I of t is some Z I 0 e raised to lambda 1 t, and similarly or lambda I t. So, for I equal to 1, 2 up to n, or in other words, what do we have here? We have defined our y as z v into z, and individually z solution is given like this. It implies that the solution y of t is given by some constant C 1, let us say e raised to lambda 1 t plus C 2 e raised to lambda 2 t plus C 3 e raised to lambda 3 t, and so on. That constants will come from all these combinations of eigenvector and Z I 0 values and so on. So, what do we get here? Now, what are we interested in? We were interested in looking at the dynamics of this solution given y of 0 as some value delta, let us say. We know that these components, individual components y I are given by summation of this e raised to lambda t terms. We are interested in knowing what happens to y of t. What happens to y of t? Now, even without knowing much of mathematics, we can take a simple example. Let us say that we are just have one dimensional problem, okay, lambda 1 t. Now, suppose y is equal to 0, this is against time, and this is I am plotting y1, y equal to 0 is the solution. So, suppose I am starts at t equal to 0, I start somewhere over here. Now, what will happen to as time progresses will depend upon what is the magnitude of this lambda 1 or what is the sign of this lambda 1. Suppose lambda 1 is 0, then what happens? The solution will remain something like this. Okay. This is for lambda 1 equal to 0. Suppose lambda 1 is a positive term, then what will happen to this solution? As time increases, y 1 will keep on increasing, I do not know, in the exponential form, okay, in the exponential form. So, this is for lambda 1 greater than 0. But what will happen if lambda 1 is less than 0? For lambda 1 less than 0, as time increases, y 1 will go to 0. And isn't this is what we are looking for our stable system? Indeed, that is, given a small perturbation, if I go back to my original steady state, that is, it is stable and attractive, I call such system as asymptotically stable. And this simple example would have convinced you that depends upon the sign of the eigenvalue. So, to summarize, we say that a system is asymptotically stable if real value, because eigenvalues can be complex. So, we are interested only in the real part of the eigenvalue. So, if real part of the eigenvalue is negative for all eigenvalues, not just 1 or 2, but for all eigenvalues, then we call such system as asymptotically stable. If among all n values, if any one is positive, the real part is positive, the system is unstable. If the real part is 0, we cannot say anything about stability of this system. We will stop here for this session, but in the next session we will look at the behavior of this system and try to analyze whether our steady state we got for our CSTR problem, whether they are stable or unstable. Thank you.